Hey, how's it going, everyone? Before the video starts, I just wanted to apologize for some of the things and some of the errors that I noticed while editing. I realized that during the video, there are some moments where I may be breathing kind of heavy, or I might just like sigh or just like have like random noises come through the mic. I do apologize for this. I don't really have a proper noise gate set up yet, and that's something that I will be looking to fix in the future. Other than that, the content that's within the video is like super informative, and I think that you guys are really going to enjoy it. I had a lot of fun filming it with Matt, Hotancold. So other than that, I really do appreciate you guys understanding that this is the very first installment of the series. So if you guys can just bear with me in the short process of me trying to just kind of iron everything out, that'd be super awesome. Other than that, guys, really hope you guys enjoy the video. And be sure to leave a comment down below of anything that you guys, the things that you guys enjoyed, the things that you would like to see in the future. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy the video. Thanks. Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm here with Hot and Cold from Darkzero, and today is like the first installment of the Struggles in Esports, series that I'm trying to incorporate on my channel. Series is basically here to showcase the struggles that players go through, on teams, and basically how to overcome them. So appreciate you being here, Matt. Thank you for your time.
What's up? What's up? How you doing?
So I'm just gonna go through here, and I'm just gonna ask you, some of the questions that maybe struggles like that other people go through, or the things that I went through when I was on Darkzero. Um, and then we'll kind of get your opinion on that and kind of just go from there.
Okay.
So basically, the first question is, many people know, some may not, that we are family members. Because of this, do you think that helped during our time as teammates? For those of you who don't know, I did play on Darkzero. A little bit ago when I first turned 18, I joined SK. They picked me up for Evil Waffle, and I was on the team up until after Japan. Um, and me and Hot and Cold are cousins. So, do you think because of this connection that we had, do you think that really helped the growth of the team, or do you think that us being family members kind of stopped some certain things from improving?
I definitely think it was kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like good in both ways, or good and bad.
Hmm.
For example, our chemistry like in game was very good. Like we would play off each other a lot and stuff like that. Usually we
Hmm.
would know like how each other play like very well.
Hmm.
And I would think like, I mean, out of game, same thing. If we're like both in good moods, it would go very well. But if we had like different opinions on something, that's where kind of you'd get the bad side of it, because you generally you usually argue with your teammates, but family members like on top of that, it kind of like almost magnifies the intensity a little bit.
No, I definitely understand that. Did you ever feel that like sometimes when we were discussing team issues or just like problems that you and I were having, do you think that I was just like disagreeing just because I was like your family member and I just like didn't really want to listen to the input that you were giving me?
I definitely think there were some times where you do that. Not every time,
Hmm.
obviously, but I definitely think there were some times where you would just disagree just to disagree with me.
Right.
Whether that was true or not, I don't know, but I think there were definitely times where he did that.
No, I definitely agree. I think that's one of the things that I've had to learn to overcome through my journey as a player, going onto Darkzero and then going into Reciprocity and then transitioning into DG. I definitely have heard over the course of my career that I am kind of difficult to team with in that regard because I like to communicate. I like to, to have like my opinions in a lot of different matters. And if there are other players like that, because that's actually like a large majority of the player base. I think in CL, even in Pro League, where people want to get their opinions out, they want to talk. From your perspective, how do you do that in a way that's not damaging? How do you do that in a way that you can actually, convey your opinions without causing problems within the team environment?
I definitely think being opinionated isn't, the worst of things. Obviously, like
Hmm.
being you want to get your opinion across like more often than not
Hmm.
in terms of team manners, but it's just like it's the timing of when and basically like how you do it. You don't want to be like, I'm giving you my opinion and this is like the final say type of thing. But also, you gotta know when to do it. Like if you do it like right after like a round, like what the fuck, you're not supposed to do that type of
Yeah.
thing. Then obviously it's gonna come off as worse than it actually is.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And I definitely feel like That's something I've gotten better with over time. I think going into DZ, I think that was one of the main things that honestly ended up getting me cut was just how I wanted to get my opinion in, and I just wasn't doing it at the right time. I wasn't doing it when when the team felt, obviously like I don't know, just the way I said things and the time when I said things, I think really ended up hurting me. So for those of you who are trying to pursue teams, for those of you who are in the same situation that I was in, um, take Hotancold's advice, take my advice, because I've definitely learned from it to, maybe when you guys are, a little bit on edge, or you guys just ended up, having a bad scrim series, you guys just lost a match, maybe hold back what you want to say, maybe restructure it into a more constructive manner, and then kind of approach the team that way. Um, Going into question two, I actually, like I said earlier, Darkzero wasn't the first organization that you and I played under. Me and you teamed when we were on SK Gaming. When we first started, playing together, when did you start noticing that I had, these communicative issues or like these opinionated issues? Was that something that was like super apparent on the first, in the first few weeks of teaming with me, or do you think that's something that like developed later in my career?
Well, I mean, to be honest, for me, like even before we teamed, like that's just like I already know like you as that,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
me and you already have had those issues before, like type of
hmm
thing. So I mean, before going into teaming, like I was a little worried about that, but I think SK at least like the early SK months, like you know obviously like it's harder for the new guy to like speak up and that type thing, which I don't want to say like put you on a leash a little bit, but like
right.
it was like it was much easier to work with you because you're just doing your job type of thing.
Right. I think that I can definitely agree with that. Another thing I think that really contributed to that was the fact that I was just like excited to have this opportunity, right? I was excited to be in pro league. I was excited to be able to showcase my skills. So I really didn't want to fuck it up by
Yeah.
being super opinionated and like throwing in my opinion. So I think the real problems really started when I started to get really secure within my position on the team, and I felt that I felt like I wasn't going to get cut because of I was playing really well, especially my rookie year. I had a really solid rookie season, and I was like playing super well. So I think in my mind, I was like, oh, there's no chance I get cut. I'm playing so well, and I think that's where those problems really started to arise.
Yeah, I mean, generally that you see that in any sports. Like
Yeah,
rookies will be like, I just learned so much from this veteran, and then the next year, they'll think they're the hot shit type of
no,
thing.
yeah, I definitely agree. Um, so kind of transitioning, into the to that SKDZ thing at the beginning of my time at SK, you would agree that I was kind of easier to work with, and I wanted to kind of grow as like a person and as a player. Or did you think that my stubbornness, like because you said like I was always like a stubborn person even before me and you really got into esports together. Did you ever feel like I was just being stubborn and like that you were trying to help me and you really couldn't because of just how stubborn I really was?
I mean, yeah, there were probably definitely times on SK where you were like that, in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
That there are obviously times where I remember, just like doing something wrong and just arguing about it. But like I said, like early on, it wasn't as bad
Mhm.
from what I can remember. Honestly, like that's that's honestly such a long time ago.
No, I 100% agree. It's kind of not looking, I guess, since it was so long ago and not really basing it off of that. What would you have like, a recommendation or, advice to younger players or to players that really are trying to get into the professional scene? What's some advice that you would say to, kind of give them when they're first joining a new team or or, to kind of avoid getting that settled feeling that like, oh, I'm getting all this information from a veteran and I'm gonna kind of like start to develop an ego a little bit, because I really do think that's how that was kind of what happened on DZ. Was I kind of felt like I was hot shit and I was like really good, and I kind of developed that ego thing. So how do you, what are the things that players should really look out for to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's a thing with every pro player in any sport, in my opinion. Like especially esports. Like esports is a little different. You need to like even I feel like I fight that urge that to feel settled every single day.
Right.
You know, you gotta just think of it as like, am I really at my best right now? No, I'm not. So I'm gonna keep trying to get to that goal. And you gotta just think about it like if I'm not at my best, then there's no reason to think I'm the best right now. type
No.
of thing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I know obviously looking back and looking back at our first tournament together was DreamHack Montreal. That was the very first tournament that I've ever played at. Uh, I guess if you I mean, I guess if you're counting that time with Polar Race where I played at the BYOC, I don't really count that. I mean, I think it was like a good experience for me, but I think my real first actual pro tournament was DreamHack Montreal with SK, which is a tournament we actually played pretty well at. How well do you think I handled that pressure going into that tournament? Being a young 18-year-old kid, and I mean, obviously you were still pretty young too, obviously 2 years older than me. But do you think that I handled that pressure pretty well? And what's some advice that you would give to younger players going into their first game or their first event? How would they handle that pressure?
I mean, honestly, it's very hard to remember like how you were feeling, to be
Right.
honest. Like
No.
I honestly don't even remember like how we like felt going into those games. I just remember we honestly did pretty well for a team. I think we
Uh
got
huh.
third place
We got we got
that
f-
tournament.
we got fourth because we ended up losing to Lestream after we lost
No,
our rogue on
they
stream.
yeah
But
yeah but
but we didn't. I don't mean not to say anything, but I feel like we weren't really giving it our best that game. But
no.
yeah,
In my opinion, we got third.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
I mean, yeah, we had some good games. I remember beating Secret when they were like on their hot streak,
Yep,
coming off like Paris or something, or
yep.
like right before Paris. So those were big wins. So I mean, as a team for our first tournament, it's a pretty good tournament.
hmm And then how would you, what advice would you give to like younger players that maybe going into their first tournament, their first game, maybe it's not even a LAN tournament, it's just like their first like competitive game. How do they kind of deal with those nerves? How do they adjust so they can make sure that they're playing at their top game?
My advice to the new players, like coming into like a not even just a land match, like a hyped up match or something like that, where your nerves are on edge, is like, in my opinion, the way I look at it is like a player should have nerves every match. You just gotta like learn how to channel those nerves.
hmm
Just think of it as like a growing period. Like you're gonna learn from this, even if it goes bad. Like don't really hang on on those bad performances. Just try and learn from them and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. One of the things that I've actually learned through my time, going to multiple tournaments and being nervous, is to actually kind of sometimes embrace that nervous feeling. Like if you're the way I see it is like if you're not nervous, that kind of just means that you don't care. And if you should like those nervous feelings like should be natural. You should have those feelings. But what you need to really learn how to do is you need to learn how to be comfortable being nervous, because if you can learn how to be comfortable being nervous, then you can play through anything.
Yeah, you gotta channel the nerves. Like we always like say, like get in your zone type of thing. You gotta
hmm
channel your nerves to get into that zone.
And I think Darkzero did a really good job teaching us how to do that. I know Darkzero, I'm not sure if you guys still do it now, but when I was in the team, Zach was, for those who don't know, Zach Matula is the owner and the CEO of Darkzero. Zach was always preaching about meditation and making sure that everyone is like in that zone that that Matt's referring to. Do you guys still do that on a daily basis going into like your games and stuff, or is it kind of like developed into a more personalized like routine?
It's developed into a more personalized routine, at least lately. We did it like back in Houston, and it kind of fell off of it like in Vegas. Honestly, it helped me a lot. I think you don't necessarily need to do it, to be honest. The one thing that I would make sure though is that your routines are the same daily. Like you do need a routine. Like make sure that you're doing the same routine, that you do for practice or for game day, and it'll just make you feel, that much more comfortable.
Yeah, 100%, 100% agree. Okay, kind of transitioning over into that Dark Zero aspect, kind of getting away from more of the SK stuff. Dark Zero obviously moved us out into a team house in Houston when I was still really young, and it was something that me and you were extremely excited for, obviously. Do you think living in a team house, obviously it's something that like every single player dreams of like especially that's like in esports. What are some of the obstacles that we had to overcome, kind of transitioning into that team house environment, coming from playing online with all of us?
Well, at least our team, I think we at that time, like even before we were going into the house, like we already had our problems. Like you and me know that as a team we had our like issues in
Uh
terms
huh.
of like arguing and just like team stuff like that. So like when you go into a house, it can either go very well or like magnify those things. And I think like
Okay.
it kind of did a little of both, depending on the timing for us.
For sure.
And because like when you have problems, it's not like you can really like run away from them.
Mhm.
You can't just like, okay, practice is done, I'm gonna go do my own thing. I mean, you kind of can. You could go to your own room, but you're gonna see him like if you go get a drink or something
Yeah,
type of
obviously, right?
thing.
You're gonna run into, you can't hide from your teammates in a team house.
Yeah.
You're eventually gonna run into them. So kind of you kind of looking at that and kind of looking at the issues that we had. I think one of the biggest issues that comes to my mind is me and Jarvis. This is when Jarvis on the team and I was on the team, obviously. I think me and Jarvis really uh, it's not that we didn't like each other. I have mad respect for Jarvis. I love Jarvis just as a person, but I think that in-game aspect, I really think me and Jarvis clashed a lot, and I think that was really amplified in the team house.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, it was an in-game thing, like in-game playstyle thing, and it was just like you guys are just two very big personalities.
Uh-huh.
He's like what 27, 28 now,
I,
and
I
you're
I would be guessing.
18, so
Yeah,
you're like what, like 8 or 10 years younger than him. So I mean,
something
that's
along
that's
those lines,
that's like
right?
a big difference for him. So I think that kind of like bled into those issues.
No, 100%. So obviously the purpose of this video is to kind of teach people how to avoid those struggles. So going into that, how do for players that are going to be transitioning into a team house, or even just having those issues online, what do you think I handled them in the best way? Did Jarvis handle them in the best way? Did us as a team really tackle those problems in the best way? And if you're looking get back at it now, what are some things that you may have done differently to kind of fix those things?
I definitely don't. I definitely think that neither of you guys really handled it like the
Yeah,
best, or like how we should have.
yeah,
And same with the team, like we handled it okay, I think sometimes, but we definitely could have handled it better. It's definitely like a learning curve
uh-huh,
because we're all new to that, even the coaches and stuff like that.
exactly.
Um, one thing I would say is just like don't get caught up in the little things. Like just look at the big picture. Like why are you there? Like, like really ask yourself like why the fuck am I here?
Hmm.
Type of thing.
Hmm.
And if it's like to argue with my teammate, no, it's to be the best. So like whatever you got to do, you got to do. And I think like at least during those days, I could have had that in my mind a lot more, and vice versa.
No, I agree. Kind of taking a step back and looking at it from my perspective, I think I definitely could have handled the situations like so much better, and I feel like pretty embarrassed to look back at the things that I said and back at the things that I did in that environment, because I kind of was taking everything for granted. I kind of was just like not appreciating what I had in that moment, because there's a saying, it sounds cheesy, but you really only appreciate what you have once it's gone. And I think I definitely realized that if I could go back and change what I did in the past, I think I definitely would have been just less vocal. I think like Jar had probably made some like some good points, but at the same time, like if you're having a conversation with a teammate, whether you guys like each other, whether you guys agree with each other or not, you have to listen to what your teammate is saying at face value. You can't just like immediately shut out his opinion, because then you're just shutting out his emotions. And I think that's something that I did a lot. Like someone would try to talk to me and I'd be like, I disagree. I disagree. I don't want to talk to you. I don't. And I think that really, really, really hurt me on Darkzero, and I think it really led to my demise. So what I recommend is that if you ever have teammates that are trying to tell you something, just know they're trying to tell you something because they're trying to make you a better player. They're trying to help you. They're trying to help the team. They're not doing it in a destructive manner. So you have to just really open up and be able to take constructive criticism at face value.
Yeah, I mean, even let's say like even if there is some sometimes where they are like being like very destructive towards you or
Hmm.
something like that.
Hmm.
Um, there are ways to channel it into like, okay, there is something I could learn from this. Like
Exactly.
even if it like I don't agree with it, there
Hmm.
is at least something I can learn from this, or like he could maybe learn from me if I bounce it back the right way, type of thing.
Yeah, and I think me and Jar really did try to have those one-on-ones. I know there was multiple times where Jarvis would be like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And like me and him would go into the other room and like we would like, we would talk it out. But I think what really just led to the demise, I guess, of Jarvis and myself was that we would be okay for a few days and like we would work through it, but then it was never consistent. It was never like, okay, this is like 100% fixed. It would always just go back to being normal within the next few days. And I think that's definitely that definitely led into why Jarvis got cut, and why I ended up getting cut later too. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
um, I guess going into talking about me and Jarvis getting dropped, you're being my cousin, kind of looking at it from not even as a player perspective, but looking at it from just being my family perspective, when did you know that I needed to be dropped, and and why?
Um, I mean, it was hard for me because like I was never one to really make those kind of decisions.
Hmm.
As like the team's always been, it's usually been like Kyle, Brandon and Jordan at the time, I guess, was coach.
Right,
So it's usually like them three, and it kind of like stems down and like trickles down to the rest of the players.
right,
But I just knew probably around like before rally, maybe even earlier than that, that like if you didn't change what you were like what you were doing, like it was just not going to work out with the team.
right.
Like it was just like almost at a point where like the team was just like done with you type of thing.
Okay.
It's like there's nothing really like changing their minds at that point.
Do you think that having those feelings of just being like, I'm really just like done with Nick's, like he's not really, he's not really adapting or anything changing. Do you think there was anything to kind of, I guess, flip the switch, like turn you guys around? Like if I made like massive improvements, and if I made like, I mean, like, actual, like, I guess, improvements towards the changes that I needed to fix and towards my issues as a player, do you think that you guys would have ended up changing your mind, or was I still like, like this guy's gone?
I mean, yeah, of course. If you're playing, great fucking Siege and you're being a great teammate, there's no reason to cut you type thing. That's just
Yeah,
how it is. But, even if you're playing like a main thing with you is like if you're playing great Siege, you're also like having like pretty shitty teammate days. Like
yeah,
you weren't consistently like good or bad in anything. It was very up and down, which was, kind of an issue. So it, it kind of hurt us because it was hard to look at results because they was so like in between or like it was so like back and forth. Like
yeah.
okay, we don't really know like exactly what's wrong.
No, I get that. I guess, kind of looking at the positive on the, from that, like looking at the things that we can learn from that. What are some of the things that I could have done to really improve my, I guess the experience that you guys were having with me as a player, and what can I have done to kind of fix my issues? Was I just being too close-minded? Was I just not really listening to you guys enough? Was I just being too emotional? Like, what are the things that I could have done as a player to really fix my situation?
I mean, I think the main thing, honestly, like I don't know if we could have like fixed it for you, but you like just needed to take a step back and like realize like what we're actually trying to do here. Like we already talked about this, but like if I feel like if you just like realize like why you're even here type of thing,
Uh-huh.
then it would have been a lot easier for you to be more open minded
Okay.
or just like you know realize like your place on the team and what you need to do in order to be the best in that place.
Okay. It's kind of, fitting my role type idea.
Yeah.
Um, I guess kind of transitioning into that to talking about more of like a role type thing. Um, Obviously I'm kind of going off script here because I'm kind of just like, being on the flow, but when we're talking about roles and talking about playing your role, I think that's super important in esports and in siege in general, because like there's so many like clear cut roles. You have your IGLs, you have your flex players, you have supports, you have your entries, and I think you make a really good point about how I really wanted to take more of that IGL approach. I really wanted to take more of that being super vocal and being super opinionated approach. If there are players out there that kind of have that approach, of being, they want to be super vocal, but they're kind of in the position where I was, where I really can't. How do they really go about, doing that? And I guess talking about it from my perspective too, how would you have like suggested that I like be able to be vocal and have my opinions without feeling like I'm just having to like shut up?
Well, the thing is like even if you're like that you want to be like that strong IGL person or
Uh huh.
character in the team, like there's ways to channel it into like still being that. One thing that me and Brandon have been talking about lately is like he doesn't want me to be like an IGL. He wants me to like manage. Like it's a lot easier for me because I'm in that supportive role. And that's like a role where it's like you need to do a lot of managing type things.
Hmm.
Like but there's a lot of times where I want to make calls and stuff like that. But instead of making the big IGL calls, I'll basically like manage people to be in the right spots in order for the IGLs to make those calls.
Okay.
So you could channel it in ways like that, or you could just like talk to your coaches and IGLs and be like, sometimes I think I have, good calls, and um, I was just wondering if like there's any openings where I could help with that, and
Right.
speak to them like open-mindedly, obviously. And if they shut you down, I mean, that's just sometimes that's just how the team works, it's kind of like more like a Fabian approach or like a super approach. Obviously like those are pretty good IGLs, and you kind of just have to go with what they say.
Got you. Not to kind of run onto one topic here because I actually am genuinely curious. I also don't if this is kind of going into too much of like a personal of like the current Darkzero, then I totally understand of you from not answering. But I think me and Skies actually had a lot of the similar issues, and I think Skies and I actually talked about it um, a little bit on Twitter ago, where he was like, I ended up getting dropped from DG, and I made my whole entire Twitlonger post, and Skies responded with you and I are similar in a lot of ways, but you'll if you can learn how to kind of channel that into a positive, like in a positive way for your team, it can be super beneficial. How did Skies kind of get to the position that I was trying to get to within Darkzero, and what like route did he take that I failed to kind of see? Because I felt like the things that Skies are doing now is kind of the things that I wanted to do on Darkzero, but I was just kind of met with restrictions. So kind of how are the two sides really different?
Well, I think at least in that regard, like the main issue for you is like most of the time we had Brandon on board, so he's like already in that role type of thing.
Okay, okay.
So there's not really like room for like three people in that role.
That makes sense. That makes
So
sense.
I mean that was a big thing for one. Two, it's like Alex is a lot more lenient, at least now. I'm sure he was probably just as bad,
Uh-huh.
but at least now like he's a lot more lenient on like how he says stuff and like criticism. Like he's really good with criticism. Like I do one-on-ones with him, and he'll just call me out for everything I do wrong, and vice versa. And even if we both disagree on what we're saying, like we're still learning from it, and we're
Okay.
not like getting like having bad blood.
Okay, so it's just more so kind of just the way that he developed and he learned how to be lenient, and I really didn't develop in that aspect. So for players out there that really are trying to take more of that vocal IGO role, maybe that secondary IGO role, kind of learn from my mistakes in the sense that don't be so hard-headed, don't be so close-minded. Learn to kind of take criticism for your teammates and learn to kind of learn to when to take that step back and kind of take stuff at face value. And I think if you do that, your team is going to be super understanding to letting you kind of take more of that IGL approach. I think I think what really set Darkzero off, especially from my perspective, was that they weren't going to give me control if I wasn't going to be understanding with them. So since I was being so close-minded, they were being close-minded to the things that I wanted. I don't know if you can kind of comment on that if I'm spot on or not.
Yeah, I mean for the most part that's probably right.
Yeah.
There's some times where it's probably a little different, but for the most part, yeah.
Okay. Kind of transitioning into the time where I did get dropped. I did get dropped after Japan. I think we had a pretty disappointing performance to say the least. Obviously, we wanted to get first, and if looking at it, back second, it's like, oh, you got second place, like it's like a great placing. But for us, it's like we were so disappointed. We really felt like we had that tournament. um After that, how do you think that I really handled the news about getting dropped? Did you think that the way that you guys went about it, the way that the entire situation, from your perspective, was it handled correctly? And how do you think I kind of accepted it?
Um, I definitely don't think we handled it the best, to be honest. I think we could have done some things differently for sure, but overall, I felt like we did it all right. I think you took it all right. Obviously, no one takes getting cut like that well. Obviously, you're not
Yeah,
really supposed to,
yeah.
but I mean, it's not like you wanted to fist fight me or something like that. Like,
No, no, totally.
so I think you took it better than expected. Obviously, you just needed time to like think about it and really like realize why and like realize what even went wrong type of thing.
Yeah, I think not to cut you off or anything, but I think a big reason that I wasn't super demoralized. I mean, obviously I was crushed. That meant that I was leaving Darkzero, an organization that I fell in love with, and then I was also leaving my family member, in you. So I was definitely upset. But I think one of the things that definitely made me realize that I was still in a pretty decent situation was that I actually wasn't getting cut, I was getting traded. So I had other opportunities in reciprocity, and I had an outlet to really showcase my abilities still. Kind of backpedaling here and looking at the drop itself. How do you um, to what do you recommend to players that maybe in that that may be in my situation? What are some of the things that you want to avoid when you're kind of in that position when you're getting drops, and things that you just want to not say or not do, and like how to make sure that you don't like really burn those bridges with potential teammates again, because in esports you never know what the future holds. Like, I got dropped from Darkzero, but there may be a time down the line in a few years or whenever, like, the organization, like, that goes a certain route. Like, you can never tell the future that our paths may cross again, and if I burn those bridges, then they're definitely not even going to give me another opportunity to prove myself. So from your perspective, what are some things that people can do?
Yeah, I mean, speaking on that, that same scenario's happened to me before with, with this same team on flip side.
Hmm.
I was coming off like a kind of kind of crappy season as a support player with flip side. I think it was King George, brought it up to the team like, "Hey, I don't really think Hot and Cold like did that well. I'm not really like that big of a fan of him. I
Hmm.
think we should get rid of him." Obviously, like one guy brought it up, but the whole team has to agree. That's kind of how it is
Right.
on drops. And it happened. I was at the time I was what, like 18, 19. I think I was 18. I was very mad because I'm like, okay, uh, I felt like I could do way better. I felt like we got third place that season, barely missed land, I think.
Yep.
So it was big. It was big. Depressed moment for me.
Yeah.
I honestly quit Siege for like 2 months at that time because yeah, I just felt like there's no point, and I just remember like I wanted to break those bridges, but luckily I didn't, and I went back to Siege, and Mint ended up picking me back up. So I think I definitely don't think you should hold grudges. I mean, that's the main thing.
Hmm.
You know, sometimes it's understandable. Like if if the team's just like the worst team ever,
Yeah.
I definitely think if you don't hold grudges and you think of the positives, like what can I learn from this? Why did I get cut? Really? Like, is there anything I need to improve on in order for that not to happen again?
Yep.
That's the main thing to look for. Don't just try and like stay on it and be like, okay, well, I never should have got cut, type of thing.
No, I actually think that's a really, really, really solid point. And I think that's something that I actually really didn't do. I think looking back at it now, I'm still pretty young. I'm 20 years old. I was 18, and I ended up getting cut when I was on DZ when I was 19. So I was still super, super, super young. And I think I really just didn't mature fast enough to really appreciate my time on Dark Zero, and kind of backpacking up what Hot and Cold saying in terms of just like taking everything that you learned from a team and why you got cut and making sure it doesn't happen in the future. Because I really do think that that's what ended up leading to my demise on reciprocity, is like we had personality conflicts and I really didn't learn from my experiences on Dark Zero, and I was doing the same exact stuff that I was doing on DZ, and they definitely didn't put up with that, and then they just cut me. So you have to learn from your past experiences, and grow as a player from it. And I totally understand that now, and I think that's something that I am never going to let happen again in the future. Um, Kind of going forward and looking at the drop itself, kind of looking at the aftermath, kind of looking at what happened between you and I after the drop. Do you think, or not even just between, but not after the drop, just like you and I, our relationship on Dark Zero as a whole, do you think that Dark Zero and just us teaming together really diminished our relationship as family members? And what are some things that players need to avoid to make sure they're not, maybe they're teaming with some friends, or maybe there's a situation where they are teaming with family members? What are some of the things that they need to avoid to make sure they're actually not really damaging relationships outside of the gaming world?
I mean, I wouldn't say our relationship really diminished. I mean, obviously, like it's gonna get a little worse just because we're not spending as much time together, type of thing.
Uh-huh.
Like we lived in the same house for like 2 years or whatever it was, or a year and a half or something on Dark Zero, and now what? I've seen you once in the past year or something like that, and
Yeah.
that's just like the nature of esports. You know, it's like if you team with your friends or something like that, obviously you're going to be playing with them every day. you're gonna be hanging out with them. But if you go on another team, you're gonna be playing with those players every day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, naturally, that's just what's gonna happen. And the only advice I would give for that is just make sure if you do like cut your friend or something like that, or you're playing with your family, just try not to end it. Like try not to cut ties. You know,
Right. I was gonna
try not to
say,
end it on bad blood.
if you don't mind me kind of bringing up a more personal experience from Darkzero between you and I, because I do think it's like something that might be beneficial for other people to learn from. I remember that there was a time where Darkzero was really big into holding accountability meetings. They really were big into, especially I should say Zach. Zach was really big into just holding meetings and to really talk about problems at face value. And I know that there was this meeting that we had going before Japan that you had about me, where the whole entire meeting was really focused around me and about the things that I really needed to improve. Everyone took the time to kind of say like, oh Zach, like you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And when it came time to you, you kind of said, I really don't even know who you are anymore. I don't even really know like. I just kind of want my cousin back. Was that something that you felt like going kind of looking back at that now? Do you think that's something that was actually like 100% accurate, or do you think there was some emotion filled in that?
I mean, there's definitely emotion filled in that, but I do think it was somewhat accurate because at least like my problem with the team and you was like at that point, like the whole rest of the team was like, Nix needs to be gone. I'm like, fuck, he's my cousin. So it's like very
You
hard.
were really like,
I was I
back,
was really
yeah.
torn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think I talked about that a lot. So that was like a huge issue where it's like, this is business, but he's also like at least before going into the team or like even like most of the team, we're like best friends basically. So it was very hard for that.
That makes sense. And I guess kind of taking a step back and looking at it from my perspective, things that people can learn from this experience or from my experiences, I should say, is just don't let your emotions really get in the way of improving, because I really do think that's what really caused my downfall on DZ. Is I was super emotional, I was super close-minded, and when I came to family members, I think I really put Hotancold into, or Matt into a really tough position, because I felt like I was leaning on him a lot. I really did felt like I was kind of using Matt. I don't want to say using in a negative way, but I was really leaning on him in the sense that I was like, oh, there's no chance I get cut here. I have family members in the team. I'm playing really well, and I really just took stuff for granted. So make sure that you guys can kind of learn from my experiences and make sure that doesn't happen, whether you're teaming with friends or whether you're teaming with new people in general, and you've kind of learned to build that friendship over time. Kind of don't lean on people and just learn how to be accountable for yourself.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, if you're trying to do this and you're trying to be the best, like business is business. If your friend on your team is not keeping up with what you're doing, not putting in the work, it, like that's just how it is. Like there's what hundreds of other people that are putting in more work than your friend if he's just not putting in what he needs to be putting in.
Right.
So I think you just got to look at that if you're having troubles with like a teammate that you really like or something like that.
Right, for sure. Kind of the last thing to kind of close everything out is when I got cut off the team and you guys were kind of going into that transitional period with Skies going into your new season. What's something that you kind of learned from the experiences with me that kind of benefited your team in the long run?
Let me think.
Hmm.
I think one thing was to make sure that everyone like feels like fully included, in the team.
Hmm.
Like there's no like outcasts or um like one person that's not in the team like or doesn't even if he is in the team, in our minds, like in his mind he's not type of thing.
Right.
Making sure that everyone feels whole, like even we struggle with that early on with Alex or Skies, like I think he brought it up like multiple times to us. He's like, I don't feel like a team like a team, I don't feel like I'm on this team yet.
Hmm.
So I mean that was definitely like a learning curve, getting him feeling like good about himself and about like just like his part of the team.
Right.
I think it's also like it's also a two-way street. You know, you need to as a individual know why you're there and know what you need to do in order to fit into that team.
Okay, totally. That makes a lot of sense. Um, it's just to kind of close it out, and to kind of hit on some key bullet points. For to everyone that is watching this and you guys have made it this far, I really appreciate you guys watching it to this point. I guess the key things that I can say, and I guess I can give Matt an opportunity to kind of give his final thoughts too, is never take anything for granted, especially going into like a team house environment. If you're in that awesome, in that team house, especially if it's the level of DZs, never take that for granted, and always make sure that you're pushing to be your best self every single day. You should be waking up and saying, okay, am I better than I was yesterday? And if the answer to that question is no, then you need to be working harder. um, Another thing is, don't let your emotions kind of get the best of you. I think one big thing that really led to my demise on Darkzero was I was really emotional. I was very close-minded, and I didn't really take criticism at face value. I always just kind of felt like people were attacking me when in reality they were just trying to help me. And I really do think that like negatively impacted my relationship with players, and it really was to my demise. That's kind of some of the main issues, not issues, the main points that I had, and main things that you guys can kind of learn from my struggles on Darkseer. I don't know if Matt has anything else to add on to.
I mean, just kind of bounce off what you said. I mean, you got most of it, but
Hmm.
just, I mean, realize what it means to, to be like the best. I mean, it means a lot of different things, but realize what that means to you and
Hmm.
what you're gonna do to achieve that. I think that's like the main thing. It's just like never let go of your goals or never like lose sight of it, and just know you're not achieving your goal alone. You need to help others achieve their goals to achieve yours.
Right, I think that's really well said. Other than that, I appreciate everyone watching the video. Thank you very much for everyone that has made it this far. I want to thank Matt. Thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. And other than that, everyone have a good one. See you guys in the next video.